Like there are some reportable items.
In closed session, the city council did provide direction to initiate an action. However, the defendants and other particulars, once formally commenced, will be disclosed to any person upon inquiry, unless to do so would jeopardize the city's ability to effectuate service of process. And concludes the report.
All right, thank you. Okay, now that closed session is completed, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is acceptance of agenda and urgency items. Any members of the council would like to recommend a change to any agenda items tonight?
Let me get rid of this one because it doesn't go here anymore. On presentations,
Yes.
Mr. Ray may not, he had something else at 5 and was going to try to make it here for this. So if he can, when he shows up, can he do his presentation? That would be the only thing that I have requested. Does it make a difference if it's a presentation? Can he do a presentation
that's-
at any time during the meeting?
Yes, you can
Okay.
do a presentation
Okay.
We
at
can
any
leave
time.
it as an open item?
All right, so would you like to make a motion to leave that as an open item for when he can
Yes, I
arrive?
would make that motion, leave it as an open item.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, now we'll move on to the next item, which is non-agenda public comment. And we have a public this evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. Bruce Ross, 1320 Yuba Street, Suite 102, Reading, 96001. I'm the district director for State Senator Brian Daly. Some of you I've had the pleasure of working with over the years. Wanted to bring you an update about an issue we've been working on that affects some of your constituents here in Weed, so that you were aware, and maybe to ask you a bit of a favor after that. So as you know, about 2 years and a month ago, the mill fire broke out, burned down a neighborhood on its way north. One of the things that most people in the general public aren't aware of is that if there's a settlement, if utilities been mostly, if it's the origin of a fire and there's a settlement related to that, that can be taxable income for the people whose house just burned down. That's under federal and state law. It's pretty burdensome, and when you actually do the math of what people end up actually getting from some of these settlements, they end up being dramatically less than they might need to rebuild their home, recover. So there's been some efforts both on the federal level, our Congressman LaMalfa has been working very hard on it, and on the state level to have those taxes waived. This came up, I think, it really came to a head after the Camp Fire and when they started, when you had tens of thousands of people affected. So there've been a couple bills over the past couple years in the legislature to waive state level taxes. We can't do with the IRS. There's an effort there, but we can do our part on the state that waive those taxes. They passed. They weren't particularly controversial because you think we should we balance the budget on the backs of people whose houses just burned down? No, we should not. However, so this year there was an effort to make a permanent waiver, which we were not able to get the votes for. But there was a bill, Senate Bill 542, that passed. It would waive the state taxes for any settlements related to the Dixie Fire, which was Plumas and surrounding counties, as well as the Mill Fire. Went through, there weren't any votes against it, we were pretty happy, and then 11 or 12 days ago, the governor vetoed that bill. So that's a source of frustration. We're looking at next steps on this and kind of how to, the senator is not going to be in office next year, is the bottom line. But whoever is the next member of the legislature, this is a cause that I think they're going to be happy to champion, whoever's in the Assembly and in the Senate. But also, in the short run, we think that it would be helpful to get some community engagement, maybe some letters to the governor from either, it could be from the city council, but also as members of the city council, you're probably engaged with community groups or individuals who lost their homes, are involved in this situation and are trying to rebuild. We'd be very happy to have some community engagement there, have some dialogue about what those communications might look like, where to send them. The governor, yes, but also there's some other folks that could be helpful to try and build up that support. Frankly, in hindsight, it might have been helpful if we'd been doing this 4 months ago, but we thought this was going to be uncontroversial and just move forward and get signed, and, you know, why would you veto that? But that happened, and for what it's worth, the governor said that it was because it wasn't part of the state budget, and the state's facing kind of a bit of austerity this year. Should have been in the budget. Okay. It is actually possible, just like you guys probably adjust your budget mid-year, the state does that. Sometimes as soon as January, they'll do what they call early action budgets or mid-year adjustments. I am, in my ideal world, we could get a little bit of a campaign going, maybe get that into a mid-year budget amendment in January or February. And then when people are filing their taxes next year, that'd actually be ahead of that. This is perhaps overly optimistic, but it's at least a possibility. If not, you'd be looking at the next fiscal year, but they have done these retroactively in the past. So that's kind of the state of that. I wanted you guys to be aware of that if you hear from constituents, and I'd be happy to have some more conversations and dialogue about how we could do some communications. Because we're not ready to just let this go, and we like to do some of the work while the senator is still in office. So I'm available. I can get you all some of my cards so that you have them. And I'd be happy to have those conversations. I will be up, just for what it's worth. I'm going to be talking to the Lake Siskiyou Community Services District at their meeting on Wednesday afternoon next week. So I'll be up in the area again, having some conversations. So if you guys wanted to get together and maybe just have some direct conversation where it's possible, I'd be happy to do that. If that doesn't work at a different time, happy to make myself available. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I don't know if it's appropriate. I'm happy to field any questions if you have any, but I'll leave it to the mayor. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Does the council have any questions for our public speaker? No? All right,
Question for me, if you would
Yeah.
mind.
microphone.
One question for me. What's the time frame we're talking about on the tax issue?
Well, it would depend, I mean, if you get a payment related to litigation or a settlement, whenever you get that check, it is taxable income in that year. And so that would just depend on how that worked out for people. I know Roseburg offered some settlements very early with the mill fire, but I don't know who's taken them and what that looks like for each individual.
Okay.
I know there was actually another fire up here in Siskiyou County. It was the Slater Fire 2020, burned in, a chunk of Happy Camp. And it took several years for that investigation to determine, to the Forest Service's satisfaction, that the point of origin was actually Pacific Power lines. So I understand that they've been getting some settlements this year for that, 4 years after the fact. Okay. So we're also working with them.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other public comment tonight? All right, we'll move on to council member announcements, meeting reports, and comments. And we'll start with Councilmember Hall.
Mr. Mayor, I have no report this month.
Okay. Councilmember Mazzoni.
No, nothing this month, thank you.
Councilmember Tabulero.
I got a whole page
Somebody
full.
went to dinner last night, no?
I went to the dinner last night, for one. I went to the LTC twice. So LTC, which she's on the agenda, isn't she? I don't know, she's Melissa speaking at some point. November 1, all the barriers will be taken off the freeway and all those construction people will be gone. They will be coming back next year, but then I think they'll be all done. And LTC is the local transportation commission. And the second thing I want to say that we're working on, which we have been working on for a couple years, is there's a very, very good possibility of the stage servicing the ski park on Saturdays this year. 2 trips in the morning and 2 trips in the afternoon home, which that will be great. And Melissa, the director of LTC, is working on a transportation meeting of all the entities in the county that provide transportation, such as our senior van, the Madrone hospice van, and trying to make it so things aren't getting duplicated. And then we're also working diligently on the stage, but we'll talk about that later. And as usual, the stage needs bus drivers, but everybody needs bus drivers. And then another thing that I'm very, very excited about, and I just found this out yesterday morning, the Chamber is doing the trunk or treat on the 26th, and that night, plus 4 other nights, the 30th, 31st, November 30, 31, November 1 and 2, there's gonna be a haunted house here. There's a lady in town, and she's working with the high school students, and they're going to be putting on a haunted house in, somebody tell me, is it the old Veterans Building? The one that's painted orange right now? She's gonna be renting that and doing a haunted house for those 5 nights as a fundraiser for the Interact kids, which is a piece of Rotary, part of Rotary, up at the high school. Wednesday, I walked to school, and I walked from the school to the start, and then walked back to school to the elementary school, but I just went home. And we took the long way, which we took the long way because we took the sidewalk way. Is that correct, officer? Chair. Oh, no, they wouldn't have been able to make it up the hill. They could have got up and walked. So we went the long way. But it was fun. We walked, and it was lovely. And I brought my little garbage bag and filled it up. And then last night at Lola, there was lots of things. But next week, the 15th, at the fairgrounds, they are looking to change the date of the fair, being from August to the end of June. And they're having a meeting on the 15th, that if anybody has a big concern about that, I do not, but people do, that's the meeting to go to at the fairgrounds. And next year, which this was actually interesting trivia, next year the fair will be 100. Now, the actual dirt that the fairgrounds are on will be 100. The fair's been, what did you say, 164 or something? But that actual spot where they were 5 different ranchers gave them property. And it's been on that piece of property for 100 years. So they're hoping to do something special with the cities in the county next year. And I think that's it. But you know me, I might think of something else.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Palpini.
Actually, not much I want to report on, other than one of the factors is last time I was here, we reported that we were having an opening for the Collier Interpretive Center. And that night it was said that it was polluted and they couldn't use water and it was shut down. So work is still being ongoing. We got permission to continue with the trail and the marking of the trail. But right now it's closed indefinitely until the river is cleared up.
Or they get a well done.
That's possible, but yeah.
All right, mine is very brief, as I had a conflict and wasn't able to attend Lola last night. Just want to remind people again about Trunk or Treat on October 26th for our safe trick-or-treating for the kids here in Weed. Would like to thank in advance the staff for their work that we do every year to make that happen with the road closure and safety and services. And would like to implore the people in the community to participate. You can register down with the Chamber of Commerce here, looking for people that will come and decorate vehicles and or support with any labor or donations they want to make toward that end for decorations and candy and things like that to hand out. And would like to thank all of the corporate and private sponsors here locally that help that happen every year. It serves over 2,000 children from Weed and the surrounding communities, and I think that's a very important part of what we do here in the community for our kids. So with that, we will move on to proclamations and presentations. Our first one is First Five Siskiyou, proclamation of the 17th annual Read Across Siskiyou.
Good evening. I'm Karen Potts, and I have the honor to be the Executive Director of First Five Siskiyou Children and Families Commission. And we're delighted to have our Vice Chair, Alan Carver, and thank you for your contributions and your work in our community. One of the most important things that I want to share with you is literacy. As you all know, you've been an incredible supporter of early literacy in our communities, and this is the 17th annual Read Across Siskiyou event, which started with Dr. Perlman. Some of you may know Dr. Perlman and his efforts in our communities. It was his vision and his idea to start this 17 years ago, and we really appreciate your help and your continued support in consideration to adopt the proclamation this year. The books just arrived. We'll make sure that we bring it back before your next meeting. And then in addition to that, if you'd like to be a guest reader, we welcome and embrace your continued support to be a guest reader in your community or surrounding communities. In your packet, you have a menu of resources, programs, and activities. Please share this with others, and I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions and potentially adopting the proclamation.
All right, any questions from the council? All right, we'll entertain a motion for the proclamation.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We will now read the proclamation of the 17th annual Read Across Siskiyou event sponsored by First Five Siskiyou Children and Families Commission. Whereas the ultimate goal of First Five Siskiyou Children and Families Commission is that all of Siskiyou's children from prenatal through 5 years of age will be healthy, ready to learn, and supported in safe, nurturing families and communities. And whereas children in Siskiyou County from prenatal through 5 years of age have a successful start in life through daily reading with supportive and nurturing families, caregivers, educators, and community leaders. And whereas early literacy is the foundation for academic, social, emotional, and economic success. And whereas First Five Siskiyou, in partnership with Siskiyou County Library, dedicates one day each year to promote early literacy by providing the same titled book to be read by guest readers to children in various preschools, kindergartens, childcare settings, libraries, and online events throughout Siskiyou County on the same day, and provide each child with a copy of that book to take home. Therefore, the City of Weed hereby proclaims November 13th, 2024 as the 17th anniversary of Read Across Siskiyou, and be it that this body enthusiastically endorses daily reading, singing, and playing with children as a critical foundation for healthy development and lifelong success.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
very much. Appreciate your support.
Appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation is from John Ray, Superintendent and Principal of the Weed Elementary School, to discuss the elementary school's ballot measure Y.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is John Ray. I'm your principal superintendent right up here at Weed Union Elementary. I do have some handouts for you. Do you want me to come through the gate? Somebody want to hand them out? Anybody in the public wants to know? You got one right there. All right, well, thank you for your attention and giving me this opportunity. As your superintendent, I am not, in my role, I am not able to advocate for or against anything politically, including a bond measure. And so my purpose tonight is to explain why the bond is there, the options, and perhaps answer some questions of the impact of if it is passed and if it isn't passed. So part of it is I'd like to start off with just a little story how we got here. So Weed Elementary consists of what I'll refer to as outbuildings. And so there was what we called the quad buildings. Those were the newest buildings. Those were in the early 60s. It also had a very large building of a cafeteria. That was 1955. And then we have what I'll refer to as the primary building, where most of the kindergarten and first graders are. That was 1952. And then our most up-to-date or modern building would be the gymnasium, opened up in 1992. And so if we flash back to 2019, 2020, if you guys remember, there was a little threat early in the year that something was going on in Wuhan, China. And by March 2020, we were forced as a state and as a nation to shut down. And what had happened at Weed Elementary is, unfortunately, during the early winter of 2019, there was some floodings in what I will call the quad buildings, where they experienced an excessive amount of moisture from a storm that got into the classrooms in the buildings, as well as the main library, admin building, and the 2 special day classes, where there was a lot of remediation work that had to happen. They completed that work in February of 2020, but as you know, March 2020, everybody shut down. We were totally locked out of the buildings. No one came in or out. When we started to reopen the buildings in June of 2020, that's when staff, including myself, started to recognize a very strong odor of pungent, and a lot of it mildew, but also related to mold. And so our CBO at the time immediately got on the horn to the insurance company and said, hey, I think we still have a problem up here. So they came in, did a quick assessment, concurred with, yeah, there's something going on here. So then we hired an industrial hygienist to come in, and that industrial hygienist had the suspicions and would require destructive testing. And so he was given the green light for the destructive testing, and unfortunately we found a lot of black mold in that admin library building. We were forced to evacuate or get out of that building per the code. The industrial hygienist will get it to the county and the county health. They concurred with it and said, you have to vacate this building, they are unhealthy, and mediate the problem. So October of 2020, we get a small little portable and put it in the parking lot and create a temporary office. Had to relocate some classrooms as well as put our library in a Connex. Well, the board was very concerned as those buildings had similar construction and had been susceptible to flooding in the past few years. And so we had ordered the industrial hygienist to do a complete assessment of the campus. And unfortunately, we did find lots more mold in the other quad buildings and the what we call portable buildings, those little outbuildings of classrooms. We found mold. And in fact, we found the Stachybotrys black mold at 3,200% above the acceptable level. And so it wasn't just unhealthy, it was very extreme unhealthy that we needed to immediately vacate those buildings. The fortunate part was we didn't find any black mold in our existing cafeteria. However, during their assessment, they did notice, if you guys were familiar with the construction, they had large wood, timbered, glue, laminated beams running across there. A lot of them had what we call checks, very large cracks in them. And the engineer was concerned that this would no longer meet the snow load requirements. So the engineer came in, did an assessment, and unfortunately, that building was not suitable for habitation with those existing trusses not meeting the current snow load. In addition to that, in that primary wing, the way we used to heat schools in the a boiler system and maybe using diesel or sometimes coal, you would build a concrete vault around that boiler structure for fire safety. But in the early 50s, we did not have the technology or the knowledge to meet today's seismic codes. And it was deemed that that vault would fail in a seismic event, and that under the California code, we're required to repair that as well. Well, in the repairs, it's not as simple as go in and mitigate the problem. In our era of construction, it was very common that we used asbestos in many of the products, from glue to insulation to the ceiling tiles to even the floor tiles. In addition to that, it was very common to use lead paint. And so you can't just go in and fix that problem. You have to actually abate all of those unhealthy building materials. So the cost to just mitigate the problem starts to go way up. In addition to that, in a school-driven project, we don't fall under like the county permit. We fall under the Division of State Architects, called DSA. And so when we get DSA involved in there, you're required to meet state building codes for the public, which are, I would say, twofold over like residential in your construction process. Additionally, we would be required, if we're working on any part of the building, to bring the rest of the building up to code in fire, life, and safety. Meaning in a lot of buildings, from fire sprinklers to life access to even the ADA access, which is where like the wheelchair ramps and whatnot. And as you know, we're built on a hill. And when we go, for those of us that went to those schools, you remember going from like the quad buildings out to the playground. Those little hills were not to code. And in that primary building, you had a big ramp that all the kids accessed. That ramp was not to code. And to get in and out of the cafeteria, we always had to use steps. It was great to use this rail just to slide down, but it was not ADA accessibility. So the cost to start to rehab those buildings exceeded expectations very fast. The money for school construction comes from two pots. There's a community side, and then there's a state side. It's in our state constitution that the state's responsible for the schools, not the federal government. It's in each individual state. In California, we typically have a funding model of what we refer to as a school facilities bond. And you guys might notice on this 2024 election, a Measure 2 is on there for a school facilities bond. That's a statewide access to a bond. Now, that isn't a bond like we know, a taxing bond. There's no tax increase for the citizens of California. It's actually, they pull it out, they borrow it from the general fund money and then pay for the school facilities. It's just less general fund money available for other operations. But that's how we fund school facilities. Now, the community side, it's based on schools raising money through a couple of options. One of them is what's referred to as a general obligation bond, which I'm talking about today about Measure Y. So in the school facilities funding model from the state, there's two sides of that. If you're doing a modernization or rehabilitation, it's a 60-40 match. 60% comes from the state and 40% comes from the locals. If you're doing new construction, it's a 50-50 match. 50% comes from the state and 50% comes from the locals. So you might look at a community like Weed and our bonding capacity, if we were going to try and fund it according to the state model, and our bonding capacity at the time when this whole adventure started was right around $6 million. So if we did a 50-50 match, that'd be $12 million for a school. Now, you can't build a school for $12 million because you got prevailing wage, you have DIR construction, and then you have DSA where it's very much overbuilt. So here Weed Elementary is. We can't be in our buildings. We have to have a temporary campus because we are required to still serve our students, but we can't be in our buildings. We have to somehow pay for a temporary campus. There is no money from the state for a temporary campus. You have to figure out how to do it. In addition to that, you got to build a new school. You got to fix the problem. Because the state says if your cost to rehabilitate that building exceeds 50% of our estimated value based on our formula, then you're required to knock it down and start over. It is now a new construction model. So remember when I went back to those ADA and all those upgrades and the abatement? It wasn't very long that we exceeded that 50% value just because the cost to remediate the problem got very much higher in a very quick amount of time. So we're required to knock them down and start over. So Weed Elementary, we didn't plan for this. We were handed this due to a natural event. Mold is a natural occurring event, and yet we're required to build this, and we have a very limited amount of funds. Now, the state has another option for communities that don't have the bonding capacity. It's called a financial hardship. We have to prove to the state that we don't have the money to come up with our 50% of the school to be built. And that is that we've exceeded our bonding capacity. And we can exceed our bonding capacity in two ways. We can issue what's called a certificate of participation. That's a fancy term for a public agency to issue a mortgage on their property and borrow some money. That means that we would pay for it out of the general fund, make payments each year. Or you can pass a GO bond. Well, when it initially happened and we needed cash right away for a temporary campus, we issued that COP right away. And we issued it for $3.5 million. It immediately put us at the time in qualification for a financial hardship. We took that $3.5 million, and that's what we're currently paying for the temporary campus right now. Now, that is a general fund obligation. That is close to $200,000 a year that we pay out of our money that's supposed to go to day-to-day operations for teachers and equipment and that we pay $200,000 a year for this temporary campus. Now, well, it's not a complete waste of money because we needed somewhere to go, but there's no equity. There's nothing we can recoup once we're done with this project. That temporary campus goes away. That $3.5 million goes away, and there's nothing to show for it. And that's a general fund obligation. Well, even though we had the mill fire, the way our county assesses our property value, our assessed value, according to our bonding capacity, has gone up. And the way the county has explained it to me of why our assessed value is what it is because the county takes the county as a whole, takes the entire assessed value, new sales and all, and then divides it equally amongst the dwellings within the county to come up with your individual assessed value. So your assessed value for your particular community isn't community specific. It is actually based on a countywide survey. So we had a mill fire where we lost a lot of homes, but our assessed value has gone up. Kind of weird to figure out. So the state says, John, you don't meet financial hardship anymore. You have to maximize from your community side of it. So in addition to the $3.5 million that's already been placed on the COP, that's when the board decided to move forward with a GO obligation bond, because there's no way that the community of Weed or Weed's day-to-day operations can afford to build a brand new school that is required to be built. In addition to that, our costs are incredibly high. Now, I've talked a little bit about the timing of this. If some of you in the construction trade or remember those days, when before COVID, sheet of plywood, maybe $28 for a half-inch sheet of plywood. They went all the way up to like $65 for a sheet for the very exact same sheet of plywood. Those costs are exponential. That's what we're incurring right now. In addition to that, we've hit some snags along the way. Some of those snags, as some of you know, we found a little diesel along the way. Just that diesel mitigation along those areas cost Weed Elementary $1.5 million to mitigate that diesel problem that we haven't received the money for yet from the state. In addition to that, as you know, we're replacing all of the water lines, and the city approached us and said, there's a lot of water lines for the community that cross your property, and that's our responsibility. And so, yes, that's our responsibility. So we're required to pay for all of the new water lines, like for the community up there, that looping water line that went across the Weed campus there. So it was old transite line, asbestos, that we were required to pay. We don't receive any funding for that. That has to come out of that new construction funding. So as all projects happen and when you're doing. There are unexpected costs, but we've had exponential unexpected costs in addition to a crazy market that we're experiencing in these COVID era days. And so the board, we tried to protect the taxpayer and the community as much as we could in not putting a GO bond on there, but based with where we are today, where the school is today, they have decided to put this on there. Speaking of where we are today, progress so far, we have completed increment 1. That's the brand new cafeteria some of you had a chance to go into. It's not just a cafeteria, it's actually our central plant. So that's where all of our heating and cooling operations for the entire campus are. That's where we have our main fire sprinkler room that meets today's codes of all the fire sprinklers and everything. That's that main room. It's our main data room. It's our main electricity room, which we ran all new power lines underground for all of that to meet today's code in there. So that's completely done. We're occupied. We're in it. In addition, you might see a one-story building that goes east to west. That's what we refer to as the kindergarten wing. There's 5 classrooms in that. There's 2 preschool rooms, 2 kindergarten rooms, and 1 transitional kindergarten room. And then we're about halfway done of the 2-story structure, which has 6 classrooms in it. And then the stuff they haven't seen right now is the remaining classrooms, library, media center, and admin building. So I gave you a lot of information really fast in trying to honor and respect your time. But I'm here to answer questions and to tell you about a little bit about what that means for the taxpayer, because the bottom line, it's $30 per year per $100,000 of assessed value. And your assessed value is typically reflected on your tax bill. It's not your appraised value. It's not what you could sell it for. It's your assessed value that you're paying taxes on right now. It might be highlight to note that Union Elementary did pride itself in protecting the taxpayer, and to my knowledge, we've never had a school bond measure on any ballot since Weed Union has been created. So, with that, any questions?
I think I'll start. I hope we'll begin this. John, we're talking with this GO bond obligation plan, and how much money are you going to raise from this bond?
$6.5 million.
$6.5 million. And that's not, the $3.5 million for temporary, that's something different. Now, the $6.5 million plus the state's $6.5 million is going to complete this project?
So on that state bond, on that ballot that I talked about, Measure 2, in that Measure 2 is language for that bond to be retroactive, where they have said that we need to make it right with schools and we need to pay for temporary housing when they're faced with an emergency crisis. So it wouldn't necessarily turn into $6.5 million, but it would net us closer to $5 million out of Measure 2 if it passes as well.
And this would be a retro that the taxpayer would be actually going back to as far as you can go to start this? When you say retro.
It's retro, meaning typically when a state bond measure is passed, it means all future projects. So beginning, so November 6th, say Measure 2 passed. November 6th comes along and Weed Elementary wants to file for a project. You would follow under the guidelines of that Prop 2 guidelines set up. That's typically how the school bonds did. This is unique that the Measure 2 said, you know what, we need to make it right with previous building projects that fell under the previous bonding capacity. And so it's retro back to the 2016 bond.
I'm having a hard, the total bill the amount that you're gonna need to complete the school is what?
About 7.3 is the estimated to completion right now.
7.3, and that's including, the state's gonna be paying part of that, 50/50?
So if Measure Y passes, that'd be 6.5 from Measure Y. And if Measure 2 passed, we could get net up to $5 million from there.
So what is the state putting in now?
So the state has already put in close to $28 million for the project.
They've already put 28.
Correct.
And if it was going as the 50/50, we would be putting 28. million in?
So we qualified for a financial hardship on some of those applications, once we showed that we burnt out our $3.5 million. So then they came up with our 50%. Now, our 50% was based on a formula that they think we could do the project in. That formula did not reflect today's prices, nor did it reflect doing a job in a rural area. I'll give you an example, Mr. Hall, that when we do a job, it requires DIR work, or Department of Industrial Relations. You have to have certified payroll and prevailing wage. So it's not just a regular contractor doing it. You have to do all this paperwork. There's not too many qualified contractors around here, so typically people that bid on our work are from out of town. So one of the framers was from Reading, and so that framer from Reading drives 1 hour and 10 minutes to the project. I have to pay them while they're driving to the project. So my 8-hour workday consists of 1 hour and 10 minutes driving, they're working, and 1 hour and 10 minutes home. So my my work time is extended by up to 30% because I'm paying for windshield time. I'm not getting a full 8-hour workday out there, so my costs are very much exorbitant compared to a Sacramento cost. In addition to that, playing with a COVID market.
So the state's already put in 28 million,
Yes, sir.
and we have put in what?
3.5.
3.5, and that was for the temporary?
All that 3.5 is going towards the temporary
So
housing.
that's not going into the same thing that the 28 million from the state is?
No.
And our portion is only going to be 6.5 million,
Correct. From the taxpayer.
and the school is complete.
Correct.
Pretty simple math, huh? I don't know, we're in, I don't know, what other options are there? I mean, I have said I've supported this bond because I don't know of anything, what else we can do. What else, is there a discussion on that, or am I getting?
The options are very limited, Mr. Hall, and unfortunately, we'd have to freeze the project until we could have the revenue to support building the project.
Could I interject one quick time? You may not like what I have to say. Is this body's position is to ask questions, but not to lend support or a pro or negative against any of this?
Yeah, it's been agendized simply as a presentation, so
Right.
we're getting information, and you can ask for additional information through questions of the presenter, but there's been nothing agendized for official support
Action.
of the ballot,
Okay.
of the ballot measure.
I just want to keep you careful on that. Okay.
I have a question. The architect,
Yes, sir.
On the
Ma'am.
project.
Yes, ma'am.
can it be local? How local is the architect?
San Diego, local.
Because there's only certain ones that can do that. Is that correct?
The-
Only certain
Yes, and if you remember, so we reached out to a number of architects to try and recruit to help us, and you have to be DSA certified.
right, right.
And so that limits the market. There are a few locals. However, during the COVID era, there were not many architects willing to go back to work. We were rejected by a number of architects, including the architect that was our previous architect of the building called NMR. They did most of the design for the other buildings as well. No one was available during COVID. These folks were willing to take us on.
NMR wasn't even working?
No, not on new projects.
Oh,
Some were working, but they were not taking new work.
John, what's the sunset on this bond? When would it be complete? Is like, we're gonna do this in 1 year?
So so what we would do if the bond passes is Weed Elementary would immediately issue what's referred to as a ban or a bond anticipation note. And so that we could liquidate that cash right away. So we'd have the $6.5 million by mid-January. to move forward, and then the taxpayer would pay that back over a 25-year period. And the rate they're paying it back is the $30 per $100,000 of assessed value.
What's the total payback value?
So we won't know until we fully finance it. We could only estimate it, but right now, in this investment, bonds are one of the more secured places of it, so we're getting incredibly low interest rates, even though the interest rates are pretty high at about 2%. It is a fixed rate. It's not one of those variables that school districts got themselves into that they would refinance all the time. This is a fixed rate to finish out the term of the note.
All right, well. Ms. Ray, thank you for the information,
Thank you for the invite, Darrell. I appreciate it.
presentation, appreciate it.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, the nice thing about this is that if anybody has any questions that hasn't seen a presentation, they can go on to, are we on YouTube? Is that what we are?
Yes.
They can go on YouTube and watch this presentation if they have any.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Yes.
no, we're not doing it special for you.
Well, no, the whole goal was not to, it wasn't to persuade, it wasn't looking for support, it was to answer questions, to get the information straight from why the board acted on the way they acted, as well as the finances and how it works.
Yeah. and
So
it's
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my last question is, that back to the 6.5 million, that's going to complete it. I mean, we're back in business, the schools is together.
So let's say Measure Y passed and we got the 6.5 million, but
Right.
Measure 2 did not pass.
Okay,
We're going to be estimated short of about 1.7. What we can do with that 1.7 is decrease the scope so that some of the work, because in that total completion was new playfields and new restrooms outside and whatnot, we can hold back on some of that outside work, or what we refer to as Phase 3 work, until we can seek more revenue out there. But we would get into the buildings with that 6.5.
and if we don't get the bond,
Then this will be on hold and I'll be out selling candy for a long time. There's a couple of organizations that we are trying to work with from the McConnell Foundation to Sierra Pacific to, Red, working with his group to see if there's some philanthropy that would be interested in helping us. But there isn't another source of money.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the consent agenda. The first item on the consent agenda, administration by motion, council will consider the 2024 holiday closure schedule. Item 2 by motion, approve the minutes from September 12th, 2024 regular meeting and the September 18th, 2024 special meeting. Item C by motion, approve payment warrants dated September 12th, 2024 through September 24th, 2024, including any voided warrants totaling $1,002,290.53. And item 4 by motion, approve and file month-end report for September 2024. We have any items that the council would wish to remove from consent?
No, I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we will now go on to our public hearing. So the public hearing item is, we'll hold a public hearing to adopt the resolution number 43, 2024, approving the adoption of the 2023 through 2031 City of Weed Housing Element Update zoning district regulations, adopt the notice of exemption pursuant to section 15601B3, move for introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance number 477-2024 zoning text amendments. Do we have any public comment? Sorry, we'll
On there.
start with our staff report from PlaceWorks.
Hi, good evening. Jennifer Castellum with PlaceWorks. So as you just eloquently read, yes, we're here to adopt the housing element along with the zoning amendments for this sixth cycle housing element. Just as a cursory review for everyone, the Planning Commission did recommend that the council adopt this on August 21st, and housing element will take the city through 2023. It is an 8-year housing element update. This is a standard document from the state that is kind of regimented and formatted in a way that the state wants to see all of the demographics and data. Within the document, one of the main requirements is that the city has to show that there is enough land available to accommodate future growth. In the case for weed, the future growth number estimated by the state was 2 units over this next 8-year period. And the city has enough land to accommodate 2 units and is meeting all of the requirements of the document. We did submit the document to the state as part of the process for review a year ago, September. Then we worked with them to address the comments and changes. And then we received a conditional compliance letter in May. And so that letter says that if you adopt this document in front of you tonight, then we'll resubmit it for certification, and that will be a 60-day review, and then you'll get a letter. And like I said, then this housing element will take you through 2031. That is kind of the high-level process for the housing element, but I can take any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the council?
No questions. I went by the map. It's easier. I like pictures.
Well, I do have to say that the information was presented very well, and some of the statistics and data were very interesting in that report. All right.
Lots of room to build.
Well,
Does this all need to be read as one motion?
Yes, that would be helpful after the public hearing is opened and closed.
all right. Well, if there are no other questions from council, we will open the public hearing. And go with the presentation by the project proponent, which we heard from our staff report already. Are there any public comment or testimonies from interested parties? Any rebuttals? And any staff response? All right. Well, we will now close the public hearing, seeing as there's none of the above, and go on to city council discussion, if any.
We have plenty of places to build homes.
Yeah? It's pretty cut and dry. We have
Just to,
one.
yeah, just to clarify, I mean, there's a resolution, so I believe all that's required, and Jennifer can correct me if I'm wrong, is a motion to adopt the resolution, which adopts the housing element, makes the CEQA exemption finding, and adopts the zoning code table changes.
So okay.
That is correct, yes.
Could I ask a question on,
Oh. I'm sorry, I guess there's a resolution and an ordinance, is that, am I?
Yes, there's 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first would
First
be,
reading of the ordinance.
right, so the first would be, I would prefer if you make one motion with respect to the resolution, and then a second motion to introduce the ordinance.
I'll make a motion for the first resolution, and that's 43-2024.
I'll second that.
Want to vote on that one
Do we have to
first?
vote on that?
Yes.
Individually?
Yep. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries for the adoption of resolution number 43-2024.
And I'll move for introduction and first reading of ordinance number 477-2024 zoning text amendments.
I'll second.
There you go.
Any discussion or questions on that?
I have one question. There she is. I just put my screen down.
Oh.
Will Prop 33 have any influence or bearing on this particular housing element as it relates to not only our city, but California-wide?
I am not familiar with Prop 33.
Okay, that's
but
okay.
I don't think the housing, I mean, the housing element's a kind of boilerplate standard document that has to be updated every year. They make minor tweaks to it, but I don't imagine that the process would change.
Okay, thanks.
No, I just read that 33.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries for the first reading by title only of ordinance number 477, 2024. All right, well, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
joining us for your staff
Thanks.
report. We will now move on to council business. Item A, administrative. Council will consider entering into a joint powers agreement with the Siskiyou Transportation Agency.
Mayor, members of the council, there is a JPA that will be known as the Siskiyou Transportation Agency. It's very similar to the Local Transportation Commission, but it's specifically developed to handle transit and stage and that sort of thing. So the executive director of the Local Transportation Commission is here and happy to answer questions. We think this gives better representation to the cities in looking at the transit operations, which is mostly the stage. And so we would recommend approval. We'd be happy to answer any questions, but Melissa is in the audience and is also available to answer questions as well.
So, Sue gave us kind of a small breakdown on the LTC, but that kind of hinted towards what this is doing, which is involving all agencies, not only Local Transportation Commission, but the stage or whoever else has a bus or transportation, like the hospital.
So, actually, we're talking about two different things. So
Okay.
specifically for the JPA, so the goal of the JPA, since its inception back in the 80s, Stage has always been operated as a county department, with the Board of Supervisors having the final say on anything related to staffing, vehicle purchases, the budgets. They always approved all of that stuff. And so, and I've had the question come up a couple times over the last month during similar presentations, is, if I could sum it up in one sentence, what's the goal? And the goal really is the city of Weed and 6 other cities here in the county pay Stage a portion of the local transportation funds to provide public transit services on behalf of the city. But there's no actual document that solidifies what everybody's role is and how those services are managed. So really, as City Manager Mr. Baker mentioned, this will create a agreement, and you as the city will have representation through who is appointed by the City Selection Committee. And the Local Transportation Commission, one of the questions I got recently was, is the commission still going to exist? Yes, the commission will still exist. They are the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, which is required by statute. The JPA Board of Directors is going to be the transit authority, and they will be overseeing day-to-day operations through myself and staff. They will approve the budgets. They will approve new requests for vehicles. They will do all of the ins and outs of the daily operations specific for the transit operation. So there's going to be 2 different roles, and I actually had a little chart that I made that says this is what the LTC is going to do and this is what the JPA Board of Directors is going to do. Going back to the makeup of the board, there was a suggestion that we have every agency in the JPA have a seat on the Board of Directors, which means I would have 11 seats on the Board of Directors. And that might be challenging to get people to come to 12 meetings a month. So what we proposed was take the commission, they will meet as the commission, and then they will recess, and then they will reconvene as the Board of Directors for the Siskiyou Transportation Agency. And so that way, they're already in the room, they're already there, they're familiar with transportation funding and all the different facets. So I think it'll be a little bit easier. So your representation will come through the City Selection Committee and whoever they appoint to serve on the LTC. They will serve on both boards at the same time.
I would be interested in seeing that chart, if you wouldn't mind.
I do have,
I mean, you can email it. I mean, I don't need to see it now. I just.
okay, and Mr. Baker has a copy of it, I
Okay.
believe. I sent it to you.
So,
Oh, sure, I've got one. Yeah, I can get
Or
that
you
to
will have one.
Well, and
I will, I either have it or will, yes.
And I have,
understand
I
how it
have
works.
both right now, if you want me just to kind of run through them very quickly. So the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, which we refer to as the LTC, there's the commission, and then I am their employee. And so then their responsibility is for transportation planning. We prepare the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. We do the pavement management system, which you may have seen that little vehicle running through town last Friday. So they also do, they are required to handle the unmet transit needs process. So that's actually putting the ads out, soliciting the communities for unmet transit needs, and doing the full analysis. So then if you flip over to the Siskiyou Transportation Agency, there will be the board of directors. I will report to them. Below me, I will have the transportation services manager, who is already there as an employee now, and then the drivers, the office staff, and mechanics. All of those employees will be under me as the executive director for the transportation agency. Their responsibility is to operate the services. They are required to implement any unmet transit needs that are determined reasonable to meet by the commission, and then they are required to comply with TDA, whereas the LTC is the one that's responsible for implementing TDA. So it's those are kind of short and sweet, but I can definitely get this to you
Yeah,
through.
that's just, I'm still a little confused
Yeah,
as to
and you're welcome to have this
roles
when
and
it's clean.
responsibilities there.
Yeah,
Just
Yeah.
seems lots of layers of administration,
I'd like a copy of that.
So,
which is fine.
We'll
Can I-
send,
can
we'll
I
send her that
try?
to all council,
Go ahead.
so.
so as it is right now, the LTC has 3 city representatives and 3 board of supervisors. And we did what the local transportation commission. And then there was the stage. And the stage, people could do whatever they wanted, because there was not a board in charge of them. So we, as the city of Weed, the city of Dunsmere, and the other representative, we're giving money for the stage every year, but we had no say into anything that they did. And that's kind of what brought it up a couple years ago in the first place, is because they were doing things, and I myself said, wait a minute, my city put in this amount of money, and who said they could do that? Well, they didn't have a board over them to say they could do that or they couldn't do it. They just,
So this is just management for the stage.
yeah, yes,
yes.
management for the stage.
Okay, I got it.
And it takes
Thank
it
you,
from
Sue.
the county board of supervisors being that final voting governing body, essentially. They will no longer be the governing body. The board of directors under the transportation agency will be the board of directors, which you will have representation on.
Which consists of 3 city
3 city
people
people, I
and
got you.
3, yes.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Sue.
I will
I
tell
don't
you,
need pictures now, I got Sue.
I will tell you a picture if you want afterwards.
Yeah.
I will draw you that picture.
No, I'm good.
Yeah, and that's what, I think, actually, the city of Wairika's attorney is like, if you could sum it up in one sentence, I'm like, it gives
Yeah,
the
right.
city's actual representation. That is what it does, is it formalizes the agreement that you're already putting money towards. It just formalizes it in a document that says, hey, we are a member and we are paying for these services and we want to have a voice in how they're implemented.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
All right, well, thank you, that was very concise.
absolutely.
Any other questions from council, discussion?
Anything out there?
No, so can I move?
Yeah. go
We
ahead.
need a motion for this? Move to enter into a JPA with the Siskiyou Transportation Agency?
A second?
Was there any public, make sure we have public
Yep.
comment?
Do we have any public comment? All right, seeing as there is no public comments, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we move on to item B, administrative. Council will consider introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance number 478, 2024, relinquishing responsibility for enforcement of the Mobile Home Act and Special Occupancy Park Act.
Mayor, members of the council, mobile home parks are usually regulated and inspected by the state of California unless a local jurisdiction specifically asks that that not be the case. The city of Weed took that action back in October of 2018, principally to enable a mobile home park to be constructed in phases with an initial opening date of 2019. That project did not occur. We believe that the state is in a better position to regulate and inspect mobile home parks, particularly with our changeover in staff during that same time period. We're recommending that the council commence the process of turning regulation back over to the state. The first step in that process would be the introduction of this ordinance. And there also is a 90-day review period, or waiting period or review period? Notice period, pardon me. Notice period that we need to give the state to have them take it back over. So, we did notify mobile home parks of this proposed ordinance. I don't
know if anybody's.
I don't see anyone in the audience that we recognize as being part of that, but anyway, we would be happy to answer any questions and also receive public comment if there is any.
I'll make a motion to give them a 90-day notice for 478-2024.
So that's a motion to introduce
First reading.
and first reading by title only.
Title only type of ordinance. My
I'll
apologies.
second it.
Okay, is there any public comment on this agenda item? All right. Seeing as the public comment period is passed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to approve the introduction of first reading by title only of this ordinance. Next is public safety. Council will consider approval of an encroachment permit for the Weed High School homecoming parade route, October 18th, 2024.
Yeah, so the Weed High School is requesting encroachment permit. Road closures on October 18th. So the parade route would be leaving the high school on, traveling down Shasta Avenue, crossing Shasta onto North Davis, traveling down North Davis to behind the Mercantile, and then going onto Grove Street, down to Main, up Main Street, back onto South Davis, and going through in front of the elementary school, then back on the on Shasta Avenue and end at the high school. Due to staffing, we would not be able to close the road permanently. We would have hard closures on Park to Grove, Grove to Main, Main to South Davis, and then the intersection ending at Shasta Avenue. We'd also implement rolling closures where we would shut down the intersections, the smaller intersections, to limit traffic down with the help of Public Works as well. We would also post 24 hours in advance on Main Street that the road will be closed and that traffic will be limited prior to the parade.
I want to make this approval of this.
Well, you go right
I
ahead.
will.
So
Asha
you've been
Trailer,
leading
if
the
you're
charge all
watching
night,
this,
for Christ's
I
sakes.
approve this. I would like to move to approve this.
I'll second the motion. Can I second it too? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, do we have any public comment? All right, we have very quiet public tonight. All in favor of approving this encroachment permit?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next item, public safety. Council will consider approval of an encroachment permit for the Weed Chamber of Commerce annual trunk or treat from Inez Street to Alamo on October 26, 2024.
We've done this a lot of years in the past. Same thing, close Main Street from Inez to Alamo. Just keep a fire lane maintained in the middle of the event. We'll have clear signage at both entrances saying that the road will be closed, and we'll also post Main Street, no parking on Main Street 24 hours in advance.
Has it always closed all the way to Alamo?
The last couple of years it has, because we expanded due to the size of the event. Previously, it did not go all the way to Alamo.
Yeah, it went to Division.
Went to Division.
Yeah, I believe the last 2 years we've gone to Alamo, just
Yeah.
because the event is growing throughout the years.
That'd be so cool if there was cars all the way.
The only thing is the haunted house that's at 193 Main Street. We are closing at Inez, so there might be some foot traffic crossing the street with juveniles and adults to get into the haunted house. We have to give them a way to
Okay.
exit Main Street off of East and West Inez.
I'll make a motion to approve the closing of this for trunk or treat by the Weed Chamber of Commerce.
I will second that.
Any public comment on this encroachment permit?
I got one in tonight.
All right, again, our public remains silent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries
I have
to
to make
approve
a
the encroachment
request
permit for the
Before you
trunk or
guys
treat.
come forward. Make us look busy.
On to our next item, which is staff reports, and we'll start with Chief Duncan.
Good evening. Yes, we're keeping an eye on the shoe fire down in Shasta County. It grew 600 acres just today, so that's why you see all the smoke. It's blowing this way. It's between McLeod and the lake, so it's in the national park right now. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, we received funding through CSA 3. We got 2 AEDs, automatic external defibrillators for the high school, for the sports teams. That's paid through CSA 3 through taxes, so it's for EMS equipment. And so we did receive that. We also got 5 pagers for our guys and 1 handheld radio. So all good stuff to get. Other than that, we have our academy coming up, October 28th. It starts. Our sleeper positions are full, so the house is full. Actually, the last guy moving in this Saturday, so.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Porterfield.
I don't have anything this month. Thanks.
All right.
She's quiet.
Director Davis.
I'd like to inform the council that we will have a public meeting on October 23rd at 3 p.m. here at City Hall. It's for the 2 USDA grants that we have applied for. One is to repair the roof on here at City Hall. The other one is to repave Lincoln Heights, all the roads that were affected by the fire.
Are they getting repaved, like dug up and repaved, or they're getting,
Right now, that's still to be determined,
Okay.
to be determined on how we're gonna address that
That's October the 23rd,
at 3 p.m.
3 in Chambers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
As we all know, the water bypass project's coming down Main Street. That is moving pretty quickly. I did inform them about the parade that's taking place next week. They promised that they'd have everything buttoned up for that. If you are having problems getting to a business, I want to remind the public that there is public parking on Clay Street, right across from Sons Hall, that they could utilize. Another thing is the Main Street clock, which I got a flyer. I'm not quite sure if you guys have seen the design on that yet.
does it work?
One right now, no.
No, wait, no, does the new one work?
We're getting rid of it.
Okay, I'm happy.
We got the new one in already? No.
That's beautiful.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Right now, it's only right twice a day, so.
So I did check on the,
Sometimes 4, depends on what side you're looking at.
exactly. I did check on the progress of that. They have finished building it, and now it's gonna be going into painting for that. Another thing I'd like to put out is that the Weed High School is playing in Mount Shasta on Friday. And it'd be nice if we go ahead and completely filled up that stadium and help support our football team and, of course, our cheerleaders.
Excellent.
Shasta or Weed?
It's in Mount Shasta, so it'd be nice to turn that into our home field.
7:30.
Yes, 7:30.
start.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
I get, Mr. Mayor, I got a question. Chris, the lights on the east side of Main Street?
So what's going on with that is, about a couple months ago, the old timer has burnt up. It was inactive. We had electrician company come up here and replace that timer. We had them up here again this week because we continued having problems with it. Come to find out, the new timer burned up, so now they are contacting the company themselves that made the timer and try and get a replacement one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sergeant Compliance.
Yeah, nothing to report.
All right, and on to our city
Oh,
clerk.
I'm sorry, what, Chris, before we talked about fuses for the lights that are out, how about the fuses for those?
Yes, the
Defined
electrician
fuses?
company was gonna go ahead and replace those as well. Right now, they're thinking that could be a power issue that's causing all of our problems, so they don't wanna put in new fuses just to have them burn back up again.
Thank you.
Thanks for getting on it. I appreciate it. I know Bob does too.
All right, on to our city clerk.
Today we, today we celebrated John's retirement.
26 inches.
So he served the community of Weed for 5 years. Thank him for his years of service and congratulate him on his retirement.
And I would also like to make a special mention and thank you to Mr. Pemberton for staying with us longer than intended past his retirement date to support our transition to bringing in his replacement and training. You know, one of the things we continually see from our staff here at the City of Weed is people going above and beyond to support the community. And hopefully the community recognizes that and shares that thanks with them.
I'll second that.
Pat Bella was a little concerned last night when he said, "Why did I call down there and John wasn't there?" He said, he's retired. Pat didn't show up today? Okay, yeah.
Any gift cards, John said I could collect them and I'll make sure he gets them. Just, I have to try that.
All right. And our city manager, Mr. Baker.
I did want to make sure the council knew that the drug paraphernalia permit that originally would have been on the November agenda has been withdrawn through an email, so you will not be seeing that on your November agenda. Also wanted to mention that the switch for the solar was fixed. For a while, we were not collecting the sunshine and turning it into power, but we are again, so.
Thanks.
Excellent. All right, and our city attorney.
Next week is the League of Cities Annual Conference in Long Beach. I will be attending, not on the city's dime. And so I will bring back hopefully some interesting information and training that will assist the city in the future.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Successful journey.
Thank you for representing us.
Are you going to Disneyland too?
I am not going to Disneyland.
Anything you want to say for us on our behalf,
Yeah, if you have information that you would like me to take down from the city of Weed, let me know.
You should have gone to Disney.
All right, well, thank you all for the staff reports. Now we will adjourn to closed session. Again.
More.
We don't need a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
We need one? I'll second if we need.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now entering closed session.
More closed session.